Drepner's Day. The second day of Ivrovi. The day of guidance. The day of dreams. The day of puns. Sometime around breakfast. Past, Hannah decided, was her kind of girl. For a guy. So it was a truism that galaxy girls were like Earth guys, and somehow galactic guys were like Earth girls. There was still a spectrum with individuals over the bell curve. For a muscle-bound lion, Past was just fine. He had the build of a lion, and his mane had a young Jason Momoa kind of vibe. But as a person? Actually, he was a pretty straightforward, do-the-job kind of guy. She was that way herself. So he was sort of a tom girl, or tomboy, depending on how you wanted to look at it. He seemed to like his work. So far he seemed really good at it, and he had some good advice to share. Also, he had a really cool air car. Jalissa still had the epic trench coat, and Hannah had made a silent promise that as soon as she had the spare credits, that would be the first thing she got. But Past didn't just have an air car. Past had a ride. It wasn't just shui, it was epic shui. A sleek, four-seater in gleaming gunmetal and silver that looked built for speed just sitting there parked. It still counted as a sports job, because the back two seats would never hold a Shovanti. A human would be fine, but the boy seats were largely a mystery. Naturally, the biggest hurdle that morning had been keeping Eli from hitching a lift. After the initial screaming and yelling last night, first from Eli and then later from Solana, Eli seemed cool about Past hanging around. He hadn't questioned the bow tie, which Hannah had told Past to leave behind this morning, but he'd practically drooled over the air car. Guys and cars. Well, she was allowed to gawk too. The sleek little number was a luxury job with all the trimmings, but the very best part was... What? They just give you this? We don't have the space for staff to have personal vehicles, but the Tadpole has a varied collection for work, Past replied, even sounding a little smug about it. I could have come in a delivery truck, but I convinced the girl at the motorpool I needed something small, so we could speak in private. Hannah was enjoying the ride, and gave Past a bit of side-eye. He grinned and gunned the air car, pressing her back in her seat before looping around to keep the autocab carrying everyone else in view. Though I kind of like this one. So, I could check this out? You'll need your license first, but yes. Oh, hell yes! Hannah grinned. I knew I was going to like being a spy. Spy in training. Past amended for her. Speaking of which, you only have one camera on the house. There aren't any inside, but there's one on the streetlight outside. It's new. I looked around before you came over and I didn't see anything. Trust me, it's there. You remember how I parked beside the light? There are metal shavings on the ground. Fresh ones? They're still clean, so I believe so. Always plan for the worst. Damn, Hannah exhaled. Well, at least there aren't any mics inside. It's a small unit, but it could still have a micro-laser trained on the house. If it's sufficiently sensitive, it could read the vibrations on the windows to hear what's being said. Past rumbled. Always be careful when you're out in the field. Always mind what you say and do. Never blow your cover. Imperial princess? Hannah said unhappily. And no guards. Well, none right next to her. I'm still not sure about the truck I saw up the street. Past nodded thoughtfully. If I were tasked with her security, I know I'd be very unhappy. Her cover is her only real protection right now. And I'm supposed to tell our boss what I think of her, but without asking her princess stuff? Hannah pursed her lips. What am I supposed to do? Compare home ec classes? Manager, not boss. And don't call him M to his face. He doesn't mind it behind his back, but he's very urbane. Whatever you do, don't call Haram Q. He does mind. I'd ask if you were kidding, but I stopped asking that years ago. Hannah shrugged and went back to enjoying the view. There were other aircars circling around, but anyone could ride in the car. It got you from A to B, but this was getting there in style. So I get to requisition this? At need? I get a full ride for training, plus a salary. Craps. Nobody better tell Eli we're hiring. Hannah considered her future. It looked good, as long as she wasn't arrested for treason by next week. I get a room to myself, meals, and spend half the day learning spycraft and the other half working in the club? It's important that you learn the trade and how to fit in. There will also be time discussing humans with Jalissa, plus training on the range at least once a week. Past ran a claw through his belt, raking the tuft back into place. Trust me, for time in the club, ask to learn bartending. 'Cause the waiters are all hot guys, so that's out, right? Hannah raised an eyebrow. Like it or not, the Tide Pool was still a... She tried not to giggle. Cat house. At least I won't be a janitor. I mean, ew. Join the line. You have no idea how coveted that job is. Coveted? You must be joking. I mean, the free dining rooms to cover a rotating party all day long, maybe. But cleaning the bedrooms? I'm not a prude, but, The dining rooms and bedrooms, where nobles toss around gemstones like party favors. Past chuckled. It sounded like a seismic purr. Trust me, Hannah. Ew or not, the janitors get rich faster than anyone, even after sharing a cut with the staff in the house. I thought guests were always tipping you as waiters. Staff aren't there to go diving on the floor for jewelry. We're there to serve and listen. Besides, it would look base, and that's not what those women pay for. Past looped the air car around in another leisurely arc. The autocab below, with the rest of the family, was moving at a decent clip, but they were still flying circles around it. The waiters are there for the menu, and then there's the special menu. Jalissa told me about that. Hannah tried not to cringe. It had turned out there were a lot of staff at the Tide Pool. The place was several stories tall, but it hid a lot more going down. And even for a Shilvanti building, it went down a long way. Jalissa said you aren't on the special menu. Do you mind if I ask you a question? Pa's smile only showed way more fang than she was used to, but it was still a smile. Go ahead. Look, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to be nearly the only human I know here, and you're the only person I've met, so... I'm very flattered, but I'm already seeing someone and haven't even met her sisters. Besides, it's not professional to... Hannah felt herself turning bright red, and she squirmed in mortification. No, it's... I was just... What do we do for fun? Oh, well, we have movie nights, staff parties, with no guests. You'll want to stay out of town and out of sight, but there are plenty of ways to unwind. So, a sorority house for super spies? Got it. Hannah paused. So, I know your scene's in Shiki, but her sisters? It is a Pezrin custom, but honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned. We are not super spies, as you put it. We are staff at the Tide Pool. But I admit, I'm a little worried. What if they don't like me or we don't get on? Or worse, what if they can't live with my, lifestyle? I don't want to sit around at the center of a warband and just make babies, you know. Sure, I plan to go off active service, but I have a career. Tom girl. Hannah looked over at her diving companion. He was mild-mannered and dressed well. All that, plus the flashy car, the muscles on top of muscles. Trust me, they'll adjust. It's just, the only human guys around will be Chippendale dancers. I just know my dad's gonna give me the look. I saw a local human only a while ago. He danced very well. Oh? Past shrugged indifferently, which just looked out of place on a space line. He's taken, I think. Oh. Hannah mulled that over a bit. It was just a couple of years, and this was her adventure. Besides, she committed. So, I met Zinchiki. I mean, how do Pedro date? It was the first time she'd ever seen Past squirm. It was so high school she nearly grinned. Looks aside, she could easily imagine him sitting around gossiping about girls at the Garden of Eden. We are Mrake, which is the first in 5 stages of courting. She sent me a gift, and I accepted it instead of sending it back. What? Like a box of candy? It was food-related. To be honest, I was sort of a foundling, and I have no Pathfinder or Warband, so I had to look it up. Past caught her expression and shrugged. It's a long story for another time. Anyway, there's Mrake, the gift of food. Then there's the Mrak Arak-Ra, which is a formal gift to prove she can provide wealth as a mate. The ones after that are supposed to appeal to my mind, spirit, and body. Her sisters will do the same once Zinchiki gets to the 3rd step. So she's playing it cool and you've just gotten to first base? Naturally, Hannah had to explain. It felt odd to explain it to a guy and not blush at the same time, but okay. Does second base include being trapped in a garbage container together? I don't think that's covered, no. Hannah filed that one away for later. So, is there anything else I should know before we land? Yes, actually. We had word this morning that the princess is tapped to give the address for the day arc, tomorrow night. It wouldn't normally happen, but with the Empress away, these aren't normal times. What? You mean stand up and give one of those hour-long jobs with no notice? Hannah started as she thought about it. Craps, I bet she's stressed out. It's not supposed to be an hour, but yes. Past cocked his head at her. Sounds like a good time to watch her, if you ask me. Melondi cringed. Oh. The first thing you did was never to show it. No matter what it was, a princess did not cringe on the outside. The second thing you did was assess the situation, time allowing. That wasn't always possible when you were trapped in the moment. Vomiting Rikiri trade consultants still count. Having maintained your image and assessed the situation, you made a plan. The mind boggled. Oh no. It was one thing to be present for the day address, to be one of the 3 on stage representing the family, but to give it? Mother spent weeks crafting her speeches to the dawn, day, and dusk. Every year, they were the 3 times the people really saw their empress. There were always affairs of state, but the addresses were her chance to speak with them personally, to talk about the year past and the year coming, to give them a sense of her and her hopes for the Imperium. They were a chance to connect. What's up? Desi asked casually. Her glance turned to a frown. Melondi knew she was being more transparent than she should be, but a speech on no notice? There were protocols. Her mother could say whatever she wanted. Goddess knew Kamordri had, but usually it was a matter of crafting a message, setting a tone, working with the palace staff. And it should be delivered by memory. It took time to deliver something polished, and this was tomorrow night. Melondi closed the message from Lady Wikama and the palace staff, and set down her omnipad. Sandwiched between Desi and Zinchiki on the drive over to Mr. Desaris for breakfast, there isn't room to get away. At least, she hadn't disturbed the professors. Maver and Shalea were chatting over and around Tom to Solani about their wedding plans. That mattered. It would have been rude to disturb them. But this? What was she to do with this? It's... Melondi waggled her omnipad accusingly. They want me to speak. Tomorrow night. The address. That's... okay. Darcy bit her lip for half a second. How can we help? I need a speech. Then I need to memorize the speech. Melondi thought it over. There would be the dress and getting over to the stadium, but Wakama would have all of that arranged. That just left. I need to make excuses to the Desaris, and I don't want to miss another night with Vadim. You mean her? Zenshiki murmured. Melondi felt a pang of resentment that underscored the truth. All right, fine. I have to do this, and I don't want Solana Desari trying to get her paws on my boyfriend. Consider it done, Zenshiki said, without looking up. A variety of modestly violent outcomes fluttered through her mind. She was perfectly okay with all of them. I have to come up with a speech. Something personal. I can't just offer platitudes for the new year. It's got to speak to the people. Melondi took a deep breath and tried to calm her racing heart. After Kamordra's debacle, people are going to be looking at me a dozen times harder than usual. This has to be the best speech ever given. Or you won't measure up, and that looks bad for both you and your family, Desi said slowly. It would, too. I mean, people all know the Empress is away, but they'll still have expectations. Expectations is putting it too mildly. The people will have expectations. The Assembly of Nobles will be watching me for the slightest slip. Melondi brushed a lock of hair aside, trying not to think about the yawning pit in her stomach. If I'm going to undo Kamordra's damage, I'm going to have to be perfect. Relax. You're a great speaker. You even make it look easy. Desi bit her lip. So, as your advisor, you can relax about that. The only problem is the perfect speech. Oh, that's all? She said dryly. Praise the goddess, I'm saved. Just relax, will you? We've got this. Desi shook her head. Hey, Dad? Tom Warwick shook himself as if lost in a reverie. It was so odd seeing a man not plan his wedding, but... Yes? What is it? Dad, Mel needs the greatest speech ever given for tomorrow night. Have you got anything she can use? Melondi stared. The idea was... Well, it wasn't bad. The trove of human material at the Academy was an untapped ocean. Warwick sucked his teeth for a second, while Miv patted his hand. Shalea crossed her arms, while Solani smiled and cocked her head. Nothing like being put on the spot, he said after a moment. You mean tomorrow for... The address, yes, Melondi said evenly. She shouldn't have expected anything, and it wasn't fair of her to get her hopes up. It's all right. I'm sorry, but... I suppose I have. Tom grimaced a bit pensively. You do? Melondi asked hopefully, canting her head. Am I not a good advisor? Desi crossed her arms, though the effect was spoiled as her arm twitched. Her smile was still smug. I will listen to Desi. Desi is... Melondi elbowed Desi in the ribs, which only got her another smirk. You suppose, sir? Well, I consider it the greatest speech ever made. I was saving it for after the World War II sim, once school's back in session. Tom nodded. It's not something written for Ivrovi, but I expect that you could tweak it. It might give you some ideas at least. Melondi felt a surge of gratitude well up inside her. She was saved. Maybe. The Imperial address for Ivrovi was a tradition as old as the Imperium. Older. Some of them were talks and some almost seemed like conversations. Some were solemn and some were very deeply personal. Some had been awful, and some were there for the ages. If this was something Professor Warwick considered the best, at least it was a place to start and she could... It's all yours, on one condition. It would just be breakfast back home, and Pris's stomach rumbled in sympathy. She hadn't had time for lunch, or more than a bite of breakfast. Dinner was a distant memory, and she'd been awake and reading for most of the night. There were no barristers anywhere on Willis who were willing to take on the legal pioneers in general, or its leader, Dame Cantree in particular. The only way forward was the law. It had to be something based on precedent, something that would keep it away from the courts, something incontrovertible. Just before noon, she was certain that she had it. Lendal versus the Bank of San Ravar, back in the 8th year of the reign of Empress Halaga. The decision was over 2 centuries old, but it was a landmark case, the key to unlocking the Sasona case and saving Beldis Ranch. Everything hinged on the response the Sasonas sent to the original notice. The status of the payment didn't matter. Under imperial law, notice was effective once a reply was dispatched. In a realm as vast as the Imperium, intent to fulfill a promise had to be granted the time to perform. The vast distances of imperial space required time to cross, sometimes vast amounts and sometimes not. But, however great or small, the beneficiary of a debt had to extend time for the performance of any promise, either legal or gratuitous. So, even when a promise was beneficial to the offerer, there was a commitment for the offerer to be granted time to perform. As soon as the Sasonas had responded, that committed the bank to their obligation to receive payment. Thank the goddess she'd downloaded everything and she really needed some sleep. She hadn't even gone into the office, sitting in her hotel room viewing file after file. She was exhausted, but after looking at the letter a second time, even she could see it. The letter. The way it was written. The letter was not an effective notice to pay the balance due. Sure, it could be read that way. It should be read that way. It might be read that way. But it was a matter of intent, and intent was vague enough that another barrister would have called it ambiguous. She had sat through too many debates around the dinner table, and that was the first thing her mothers would have done. The language of the letter could be subject to interpretation. In a court of law, proving interpretation took time. Sometimes years, and years in court also meant money. Even worse, it could draw the Imperial Navy into the case. That meant even more money, and an opposition with Imperial backing. It was a path to failure. Keeping this out of the courts and endless litigation was the only path forward. Priss's eyes felt dry. They burned, and she rubbed them before pulling up another file on Imperial property law. So many words and learned opinions, and she had nothing, which showed how little they were worth. As far as Tom Steinberg was concerned, humans and Shulvanti got on all right. The Shul were aliens, sure, but they were mostly people, and it just made sense that after all the dust had settled, things were working out. Hell, 20 years ago he'd never heard of an Adixi, much less thought he'd be married to one. Still, if he'd had to pick a species that got on with humans, he'd bet on the Pezrin every time. Shulvanti looked a lot more like humans than the cat girls, but Pezrin just thought like humans. At least, the ones he knew. Tom glanced over at Pat Theory and tried not to worry over what that said about the company he kept. He managed not to fidget. Tom settled into the chair. Pat Theory gathered her a sack before settling gracefully into the one beside him. She didn't fidget. Kids were supposed to fidget, but there was something about Pezrin women. When they weren't screaming, clawing, brawling, or wrecking something, they could sit completely still. If you didn't know the species, you had no idea what murderous bitches they could be. Pat Theory sat utterly still, somehow managing to look too cool for the room. Jabba's office wasn't much to look at. The woman ran a bookie shop and there were screens showing the odds on games all over Shill. With the holiday in full swing, that covered a lot of action, and the sitting room outside was a few dozen well-worn chairs, crammed with the punters. There was a lot of laughter and shouting, as people of every species argued and wagered over tiny details, from what jockey was riding which Rigoi, to if a ship was using ablative armor or not. Shul was the capital of the Imperium, and as far as Tom could tell, Ifrovi was closest to when it came to its original roots, descending into simple, exuberant mayhem.
I do not understand your fascination with war games, Patviri grumbled. I thought we were here to do an exchange. Besides, it is time to eat.
You just had breakfast, then you napped, then you worked out. We have stuff to do.
You're right. It is time for lunch.
We'll eat later, and stop changing the subject. I'm just saying, humans love a good war. You know, fighting the good fight, pushing yourself to win against the odds. Kid, the whole Imperium, the Consortium, the Alliance, everybody fights. You think anyone in their right mind wants to take on a death's head in hand-to-hand combat? Fuck no. But there's a difference between fighting a battle and waging a war.
If you win the battles, then you win the wars, Patviri said.
That's just it. It's been ages since there was a full-on war in the galaxy, and you win the battles by setting the conditions first. This big battle everyone's squawking about? Tom gestured over to the desk where people were yelling about last night's match. Whoever was sitting in Sector 2 would have done a human proud.
Humans are not the only species that fights.
Patviri blinked at him, and her tail twitched dismissively. Yeah, but humans? I guess I shouldn't be proud of it, but stamina aside, we've been fighting wars for just about our whole history. Firefights need good fighters, but wars need good tactics, Tom said. Our whole history is pretty much one war after another. We've sort of got tactics bred to the bone.
What about peace?
Peace? Peace is good. Makes a great time to rearm. Tom realized what he sounded like and sighed. I know that's not how it ought to be. Trust me, my people would have really liked a little more peace, but that's how it was. Humans make good soldiers, but we're also great tacticians. She regarded him sullenly.
You are also supposed to be sex maniacs.
Hey, Genghis Khan? Human guy who conquered more of the planet than anyone in history, Tom grumbled. Kept over 500 women happy, and like 1 in every 200 humans is related to him.
You must think I'm gullible.
Look it up.
Your planet sounds like a garden compared to Pesh, yet you fought over everything. Pesh is a desert. We fought to achieve the stability you threw away.
Kid, the grass is always green. Tom paused as the door opened, and one of Jabba's other clients walked out.
Tommy, my boy!
An enormous Shulvanti woman bellowed, walking out of her office. She enveloped Tom in a bear hug that just about broke his back, definitely leaving him feeling a lot looser than he'd previously been before leading him into her office.
Checking out the deadbeats? Or did you have something else in mind?
She grinned lasciviously, sitting down in a chair that creaked and groaned in protest. Man, oh man, do I have something for you, Jabba. Tom pulled out his Omni and showed her the chandelier. Handmade by the Amyrik, hand-stolen by a Pezran and a human.
Well...
Jabba took the Omni, tapping and zooming as she inspected the thing.
Jewels and precious metals are always in high demand, of course. We'll have to melt it down, recut the stones, but if you can get it, I'll handle that.
Oh, I already have it, Tom explained, as a gaggle of girls stepped around him with their teenage brother in tow. He gave the gaggle a dirty look as they examined him with equally dirty expressions. Now scat! Business! The girls left, giggling. The boy, however, flashed Tom an apologetic look as he followed.
Do try not to intimidate my other customers, Jabba opined sternly. I'll text you a drop-off. In the meantime, if you care to make a bet, I have some of the payment from the Walos Marsalos job. She looked like such a bitch.
Beautiful. Tom fished out his credit sheet and sent Jabba a few credits.
Jabba
burbled tonelessly as she updated a few things.
I heard word from the owners that the track is wet and most are going to stop their regoy. Grinshaw's son is a sure winner to come in first.
Spending your life with the Imperium's fist in your A didn't exactly pay well, so every member of the Inquisition had side jobs going. Tom, in particular, occasionally took care of deadbeats who, for whatever reason, didn't pay the money they owed Jabba. It was amazing what a human could get away with in this town, and the things you learned. Like how the races were sometimes fixed. It was a great way to launder money in exchange for goods or services, and Jabba covered Tom's tracks by making bets. Then his pay came in increments disguised as his winnings. It was neat, tidy, and so very clean. Hell, it was even taxable. In fact, Tom's Omni took that moment to buzz, indicating his account had just been filled. Beautiful. I think a certain Pezrin girl wants lunch.
Would you like to look at the newest list of losers? Jabba smiled at him again. Or perhaps something else?
Her smile became that much more naughty. Oh, Jabba, what would my wife say? The two of them laughed. And yeah, send me that list. You know I'm good for it.
Will do, Pluvercakes.
Jabba waved, as Tom walked back out to find Pat Very glowering, as usual. Cheer up. Here's your cut in advance. We can go shopping later. Pat Very gave him a look.
Yes, and get something to eat.
Teenagers. I don't understand why I have to keep explaining this to you, Tsane. Vonda Orion, Kanshri's personal intern, crossed her arms. I told you the rules before. No admittance without an appointment. Despite the need for rest, Pris knew she was getting nowhere sitting in her room. She'd gone into the office. It was nearly 2 p.m. before Kanshri walked into her office, ignoring her. There had to be an answer. Some way to make her see reason. Vonda was useless. The woman only wanted to get back to playing Galaxy Conquest, and the other two interns were glaring at her too. Well, screw them. It's important. She just walked in there less than a minute ago, and I need to see her now, Pris glowered, slamming a fist down on Vonda's desk. All right, Tsane, I've had about enough of... The comm on Vonda's desk only chimed. Yes, Dame Kanshri? No. I'm sorry about the disturbance. I'll take care of it at... Yes? Yes, ma'am. Vonda closed out the call and gave Pris a long look. You can go in, Tsane. Dame Kanshri will see you. Pris knew she was crossing the line. Demanding to be seen was a lot, and she thanked Vonda before going inside. Kanshri was there behind her desk.
No fanfare, Mr. Tsane? No golden glaives to escort you on your mission?
She closed out her desk Omni and folded her hands over her waist.
From what I could hear of your rather impassioned outburst, that was the least I expected.
I know, lady, but I just had to see you.
Again, you mean?
Kanshri arched an eyebrow. Yes, ma'am, and I'm extremely grateful.
Spare me your platitudes, Mr. Tsane.
Kanshri didn't sigh, but seemed to be wavering towards exasperation.
Your outburst was a matter of urgency. I trust you will show me the courtesy of getting to the point with an equal alacrity.
The Sasana Ranch, ma'am.
Which we have already discussed, Kanshri said curtly. I believe I've extended all the help that I can.
I appreciate your constraints, lady. Kanshri canted her head slowly. Her tone clipped, but neutral.
And yet, you remain dissatisfied?
Yes, ma'am. I've been through everything on Imperial law, so I thought I should appeal to you.
On what basis?
Your counsel for the city of Vardosh. They might listen to you, Pris offered.
They most certainly do listen to me. The question is, upon what?
The Sasana Ranch, ma'am. It's not just a business. It's a family. It's lots of families. You've served them as their barrister. This is their whole life. Everything they built for themselves. You have to know what this means to them. Kanshri stared at her a long moment. Her face was stony and bleak as winter.
I have already counselled you that the purpose of the law is apolitical. Your appeal is impassioned. It is also extremely presumptuous, Mr. Sane.
Pris looked down at Kangshri's desk, anywhere but at the cold, unfeeling gaze on her. Instead of reaching the woman, she knew Kangshri was only digging in.
Why have you come to see me? What are you truly asking for?
Do I really have to tell you, ma'am? Kangshri folded her hands over her chest once again. Her features could have been carved from granite. Please, help me save the Sasonas.
Mr. Sane, are you familiar with the concept of irrelevant issues? Your display in my chambers was impassioned. It was also childish, infantile, and fatuous. It was outrageous, as well as an insult to this firm and the legal profession.
Kangshri scowled, her words drawn out as she delivered them like hammer blows.
From a 5-year-old, that might be excused. As a student of the law, you are expected to behave with a measure of maturity. There is no room in the courts for emotional outbursts from a barrister. They only serve to obscure the issues. Details, facts, reasoning. I have already counselled you to learn the facts, not to engage in temper tantrums. I am currently engaged in several cases around the planet. Have you familiarized yourself with them? As an intern in my chambers, I expect nothing less.
Pris held her ground. It was all she could do.
Perhaps the case of Gotella versus Roland Shaw, a particularly thorny issue of grazing rights, or possibly Barveza versus Hannah Meatpacking. These and other issues occupy my time, so for the duration you invest my chambers, they should occupy yours.
Pris held her tongue. It had turned to ash anyway. She had no idea about the other cases in the firm. She had probably lost, but she wasn't going to break. There had to be something in imperial law. I don't know the details of your other cases, ma'am. I was doing what I felt was important work.
Not work connected with the interests of this firm, Mr. Sane? Or perhaps those interests bore you?
Kangshri looked at her expectantly.
Very well. Perhaps we can make something useful of your remaining time. The Legal Codex for the System of Willist, Volume 1. I expect you to read and conduct a thorough and cogent analysis. You will provide an outline of the first 3 chapters on my desk by tomorrow. Chapters 4 through 6 shall follow by the day after, with the remainder by the day after that.
It was too much. Even to her sleep-deprived brain, it was too much. The woman wasn't just taking an adversarial role against her. She was going to drive her into the ground. Ma'am, you know why I can't answer you. You know what I've been working on. I have another obligation.
To cause a scene in my chambers? To indulge yourself in puerile displays?
But this is taking up my time. I'm doing everything I can to help the Sasonas. There were so many, yet the thread of a solution had to be there. Her mothers would know. There had to be something, but she simply didn't have the time. I've been researching every imperial law I can find on property rights. This is just abusing your authority to defeat me before I've started.
Indeed, Mr. Sane? And what have you been using to defeat me? You have occupied my chambers. I expect you to make yourself of some use before your departure, however mediocre that may prove to be.
Kangshri unfolded her hands and waved her away dismissively.
Volume 1, Chapters 1 through 3. I have already indulged you twice, and my patience is at an end. It is my order. One I suggest you comply with, or your time at this firm is at an end. Good day, Mr. Sane.
Lorem Raylin stepped out of the dining room and regarded Desala Serhard. Thank you for breakfast. I hope your family will forgive my dropping in unannounced. You stared at them, Desala said, still uncertain what to make of their unexpected guests that morning. The effect on her family had been pronounced. Pleasantries aside, the Minister of the Interior, had said little to nothing, Minnie looking at her father and mothers with a bemused smile. Raylin knew about the embezzling. She had to. But if she did, then what was going on? Where were the agents? The arrests? A minister wouldn't come for this. She'd accepted their invitation to join them, as if she could be refused, then just sat there while her parents tried not to fall apart before casually asking Tsala to escort her back to her car. Was it all just for kicks, or... I suppose that was rather unpleasant for them, though not, I think, unnecessary.
Raylan paused in the atrium, regarding her.
Events come and go. Errors become conveniences. Labels carved from the cloth of the collective zeitgeist to use like contrivances, as if history was a thing unto itself. I understand you're doing rather well in your comparative history class.
And there it was. Tsala didn't freeze, but Raylan's comment had reframed the entire morning, and her parents' distress churned her stomach in angry knots.
When you're young and ambitious, doesn't that mean you're allowed to be dissatisfied? She said tersely. I know that you are, Miss Serhart, Raylan said. It's in your file.
What is?
That you're chronically disgruntled. A malcontent, though not, as yet, a malicious one. Otherwise, someone in my employ would have met with you earlier.
Raylan lingered as she opened the door.
Your family's indiscretion only recently came to my attention, and while they've acted to correct their error, it became a loose end.
Tsala opened her mouth, but the words she was searching for were a jumble of thoughts.
You're saying? What are you saying? She asked. With time and experience, records become like fingerprints, and you're quite gifted with security protocols,
Raylan said. Her expression made Tsala wish for a change of topic.
Since I desire your skills elsewhere, I opted to remove your concern for your parents' well-being. The manner was a bit naughty of me, but I trust residual temptation should be removed. Holiday notwithstanding, your presence here is no longer required.
You want something to do with Princess Kalira, Tsala said. But you're Minister of the Interior. You have all the assets in the world to work with.
You lack all the pieces to frame the picture, but yes, I do.
I don't work for you, and you know I've already had someone try to co-opt me. Did she put you up to this? The idea that the Minister of the Interior had an agenda was... what? Are you threatening my family if I don't go?
You don't work for me, but you could. You did the right thing at the right time. Important. And no, I've had neither contact nor direction from Princess Kalira. And threaten your family over an accounting error? Excessive.
Raylan paused as they crossed the threshold and regarded her with bright golden eyes. They were light gold and looked piercing in the morning sunlight.
You're curious, and since your father fixed a lovely meal, I'll indulge that curiosity. 3 questions, so long as they're brief.
You want me to go back to the academy right now and do... Tsala asked. I don't know what.
You can assist Kalira's endeavors, if need be.
Raylan cocked her head.
1 down.
Would you lie to me?
Without regret, she said, but only if the need were sufficiently pressing.
That isn't exactly comforting.
That's why it's an uncomfortable truth. Moot point. You'd not have believed me if I said no.
Raylan paused as her vehicle approached and parked in front of them.
We are all under constraints, Miss Serhart. Rules all of us must obey. Last question. Make it count.
What are you actually doing here? Making house calls seems...
I imagine you pride yourself on protecting people's secrets. Were I inclined, I might fancy that what I do is a secret, even from myself.
Tsala turned that over in her mind. You can't mean that literally.
Certainly, if you take an enlightened point of view. I began my career in a field not unlike yours. Served as a field agent. If you consider this a house call, then I suppose I still am. I remain enabled to undertake investigations as I see fit, should I deem something a matter of imperial security. My everyday is different, yet I remain an officer of the law. With no specific remit, you just think of me as an antibody going where needed. Raylan waved at her autocab, and his door closed. Pay a call on me once you graduate. Desala struggled with the idea as the woman climbed inside. You won't remember me in 3 years. Forgetting is a luxury I no longer enjoy. Raylan's face was obscured as the door slowly slid closed. Think about the future, Miss Serhart. I do.